I thought I knew every corner of my marriage, every truth in our family. But the person my wife betrayed me with was not just anyone. It was someone who had been at every holiday table since we were kids. Someone I trusted like my own brother. What I discovered that night changed everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family. But the real shock was still to come. Subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me. I put my heart into sharing these stories, and every subscriber motivates me to create even more. Let's keep building this journey together. I always believed betrayal was something that happened to other people, in other marriages, the kind you hear whispered about at parties or see dramatized in TV shows. I thought my wife, Claire, and I were solid. We had been together for 9 years, married for 6, and I had no reason to think she would ever hurt me like that. She was warm, charming, the type of woman who could walk into any room and make everyone feel at ease. My friends adored her, my parents loved her, and my cousin, Ryan, well, he seemed to get along with her better than most. Ryan and I had grown up side by side. Our dads were brothers, and since we were born just a year apart, we practically lived at each other's houses. He was like the brother I never had. We went through school together, played on the same soccer team, even had the same summer jobs. He knew everything about me, my insecurities, my dreams, my history with women before Claire. And because of that bond, I never questioned why he was always around. He came over for barbecues, game nights, holidays, and sometimes just to hang out. In fact, he had his own glass in our kitchen cabinet, a small inside joke that he was part of the household. Claire seemed to genuinely enjoy his company, and I figured that was a blessing. Better they got along than have awkward tension. But looking back, I can see the moments I ignored. The way she'd laugh a little too hard at his jokes, how she'd touch his arm when making a point, or how they'd sometimes disappear together during family gatherings claiming they were grabbing more drinks or checking on the grill. I never thought much of it because it was Ryan, my cousin, my blood. One night, about 2 months ago, I came home later than planned from work. There was a rainstorm and traffic was awful. I texted Claire that I'd be late, but she didn't reply, which wasn't unusual if she was busy cooking or on a call. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I noticed Ryan's car parked out front. Again, not strange. He dropped by unannounced all the time. I walked in quietly, thinking I might surprise them, maybe join in on whatever they were doing. But the house was oddly quiet. No TV on, no music playing. I set my bag down, stepped into the kitchen, and saw 2 wine glasses on the counter, half full. The back door to the patio was slightly ajar, rain blowing in. I called out their names, but no answer. My chest tightened, not out of suspicion, but out of confusion. I moved toward the hallway, my footsteps soft against the hardwood. And that's when I heard it. A muffled sound, like a stifled laugh, followed by the kind of silence that feels heavy, deliberate. I stood there, heart pounding in my ears, unsure if I was imagining things. Something told me not to call out again. Not yet. I took another step forward, and what I saw when I turned the corner froze me where I stood. I turned the corner and my world tilted. Claire was pressed up against the wall, her hands in Ryan's hair, their mouths locked together like they'd been starving for each other. For a second, my brain refused to connect the dots, refused to accept what my eyes were feeding it. I think I even blinked, hoping the image would reset into something else, anything else. But it didn't. They broke apart when they saw me, both of them jerking back like teenagers caught sneaking out. Claire's face went pale, Ryan's eyes went wide, and I could feel my pulse hammering in my neck. The room felt smaller, hotter, like the air had been sucked out. "What the hell is this?" I heard my own voice, low but shaking. Claire opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at Ryan like maybe he'd have the right words. "It's not what it looks like," she said, her voice trembling. I almost laughed, because the cliché of that line hit harder than her words. "Really? Because it looks exactly like my wife making out with my cousin." Ryan took a step toward me, hands raised like he was calming a wild animal. "Man, just let's talk about this, okay? It's complicated." "Complicated?" I snapped, my voice rising now. "You two were in my house, behind my back, and you're calling it complicated?" Claire's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or from being caught. She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. My chest felt like it was splitting open, every memory of the two of them laughing together now twisting into something poisonous. I thought about every holiday dinner, every birthday, every moment where Ryan had been just an arm's length from her, and from me. I thought about the time he helped us move into this house, carrying furniture through the same hallway I was standing in now, the same hallway where I'd just seen them tangled together. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Neither of them spoke. That silence was its own kind of confession. I turned to Ryan. "How long?" He glanced down to the floor, then up at me, and in that moment I saw it. The guilt, but also something else. Defiance. "A few months," he finally said. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Claire started sobbing, babbling something about how it just happened and wasn't planned, but the sound of her voice made my skin crawl. My hands were shaking now. I didn't trust myself to stay in that house without doing something I'd regret. I grabbed my keys, ignoring Claire's calls, ignoring the footsteps of Ryan trying to follow me. I got in my car and just drove. I don't even remember the streets I took, just the blur of rain on the windshield and the taste of bile in my mouth. Eventually, I ended up in an empty parking lot behind a closed grocery store. I sat there for what must have been an hour, trying to breathe, trying to keep my thoughts from spinning. But the thing is, once you see it, once you know, you can't unsee it. And there was something else about the way Ryan had looked at me when he confessed. Something in his tone that made me realize this wasn't just a stupid fling or a drunken mistake. It was worse. Much worse. And I was going to find out just how deep this went.
I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The thought of walking back into that house and seeing her, smelling her perfume, knowing that Ryan's hands had been on her, it was too much. I booked a cheap motel room on the edge of town and lay there staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying the scene over and over until my head hurt. By morning, I'd gone from shock to something else. Not rage exactly, not yet. More like a cold, calculated need to understand. Because if I didn't have the full truth, it would eat me alive. I started with Ryan. I knew his habits, his routines. We grew up together. Hell, I could predict what he'd order at any restaurant. That familiarity suddenly felt like a weapon I could use. I drove past his apartment around noon. His truck was there. I parked a block away and waited. After about an hour, he came out, looking nervous, scanning the street like he expected to see someone, not Claire, someone else. He got in his truck and headed toward the east side of town, and I followed, keeping a few cars back. He pulled into a small diner, the kind of place where the coffee's cheap and the booths are cracked vinyl. I stayed in my car, watching through the rain-smeared windshield. A woman in a blue jacket slid into the booth across from him. She wasn't Claire. She was older, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features and a tired look in her eyes. They talked for a while, leaning in close, their expressions tense. At one point, Ryan reached across the table and she pulled her hand back. Not romantic then, something else. When she left, I caught her license plate and memorized it. I didn't know why yet, but I had a feeling she mattered. That afternoon, I finally went home. Claire was in the kitchen, eyes swollen, makeup smudged, like she'd been crying for hours. She started talking the second I stepped inside. Apologies, explanations, half-formed excuses about how she'd been lonely and felt disconnected and Ryan was just there. I let her speak without saying a word. When she realized I wasn't going to jump in, she got frustrated. "Aren't you going to say anything?" she asked, voice cracking. "You slept with my cousin," I said flatly. "More than once. For months. What exactly do you want me to say?" She flinched, but didn't deny it. That told me more than her tears ever could. I asked her point blank if there was anything else I should know. She hesitated just for a second, but it was enough. There was something else. "No," she said, too quickly. I could see the panic flicker in her eyes. She was hiding something, and I was willing to bet Ryan was hiding the same thing. Over the next few days, I played the role of the wounded, silent husband. It gave me space to dig without drawing attention. I found the woman from the diner. Her name was Marissa, and she worked at a law office downtown. It took some careful social media searching and a bit of old-fashioned asking around, but eventually I pieced together that she had been dating Ryan, seriously, until a few months ago. Around the time he started sleeping with Claire. My stomach turned. That meeting at the diner wasn't just a random conversation, it was unfinished business. And if I was right, Marissa might have answers neither of them wanted me to hear.
Marissa was already at the coffee shop when I walked in, sitting near the back with her arms folded tight like she was holding herself together. She had that same weary look I'd seen at the diner, but now there was something sharper in it. Anger, maybe, or the remnants of it. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You're Claire's husband," she said. I nodded. "And you were with Ryan." "Was," she emphasized. "Until I found out what he was." I sat across from her. "What does that mean?" She leaned in. "Ryan's been using people for years, women mostly. He's got this way about him. Makes you feel like you are the only one who gets him, but it's all calculated. He figures out what you want, attention, affection, whatever, and gives just enough of it to keep you hooked. Then he takes what he needs and moves on." I clenched my jaw. "What did he take from you?" "Money," she said flatly. "Not a huge amount, but enough. He claimed he was in trouble, that some investment went bad. I believed him. Then I found out he was using me and sleeping with someone else at the same time." She gave me a pointed look. That someone else was Claire. My stomach tightened. "So you knew?" "Not at first," she said. "But when I found out, I walked. He tried to pull me back in a few weeks ago, claimed she dumped him, that he'd made a mistake. I told him to go to hell. That's when I realized he wasn't after me anymore. He was after something bigger." I frowned. "Bigger than my wife?" She hesitated, choosing her words. "Your house, your savings, your stability. Claire might have been the doorway, but Ryan's the one pushing her to keep it open. He's been in her ear for months, feeding her doubts about you, making her think she deserves more excitement, more freedom. And while she's distracted, he's been getting her to talk about your finances, your accounts, even your will." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Why?" Marissa shrugged, but her eyes were cold. "Because he's a parasite. He doesn't have steady work. He's in debt. And you've got something he wants." She pulled something from her bag and slid it across the table. It was a crumpled piece of paper, an email she'd printed out. The sender was Ryan. The recipient was Claire. The date was 2 weeks ago. The subject line read, "Almost there." I didn't read the whole thing right away. I couldn't. Just seeing those words made me want to put my fist through the table. "Why show me this?" Marissa looked me dead in the eye. "Because you deserve to know you're not crazy. And because I want him to burn too." I left the coffee shop with my mind spinning. The betrayal wasn't just personal now. It was strategic, deliberate. And if they thought I was going to be their easy target, they had no idea who they were dealing with. That night, I didn't confront Claire. Instead, I started gathering every document, every bank statement, every email I could find. I changed passwords, moved funds, made copies of anything that could prove what was happening. If Ryan was planning to strip me clean, I was going to make sure he was the one left with nothing. Claire tried to act normal, but I could feel the strain in her. She avoided eye contact, her laughter a little too forced, her movements a little too careful. She knew I suspected her of something, but she didn't know I'd already shifted into a different mode. Not the betrayed husband, the man who was about to take back control. And just when I thought I'd prepared myself for everything, I stumbled across something late one night, hidden in a folder on Claire's laptop. Something that didn't just confirm what Marissa had said, something that made my stomach drop in a way I hadn't felt since the day I caught them together.
Inside that folder were scanned documents, bank transfers, property deeds, even a copy of my signature on forms I'd never seen before. They were in Claire's handwriting, but the signature was mine. The dates were recent. My pulse was pounding so hard I could barely read. I opened one file at random and saw the worst of it. A transfer order moving $75,000 from our joint savings into an account I didn't recognize. The account holder's name was Ryan Matthews. My hands shook, but I kept scrolling. There were messages too, a string of emails between them discussing timelines, cover stories, and getting him to sign the last one. They were plotting to empty me out completely. The last one was probably the sale of my late father's cabin, my one real tie to him, and something I'd refused to ever part with. They wanted it gone, and fast. I could almost hear Ryan's smug voice in my head feeding her the lines. Claire wasn't just cheating, she was actively dismantling my life piece by piece, and she thought she was smart enough to get away with it. I didn't sleep that night. I copied every file onto a USB drive, printed hard copies, and stored them in a locked drawer at work. I also called a lawyer, one who specialized in financial fraud and marital disputes. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. Step 1 was cutting them off before they realized I knew. I called the bank, froze the joint account, and had my name removed from anything Claire could access without me present. Then I told my lawyer about the cabin. He advised me to secure the title immediately. By noon, it was legally untouchable. Step 2 was setting the trap. That evening, I told Claire I'd been thinking about taking a trip, just a few days away, no phones, just clearing my head. She looked relieved, probably thinking it would give them time to push through the last of their plan. I left early the next morning, but I didn't go anywhere. Instead, I parked near Ryan's apartment and waited. It took less than 2 hours for Claire to show up. I recorded everything. Her walking in with a folder under her arm, staying for nearly an hour, and leaving with that same smug little smile she used to give me when she thought she'd outsmarted me. Step 3 was the meeting. 2 days later, my lawyer and I arranged for both Claire and Ryan to meet us to finalize the cabin sale. They walked into the office together, confident, probably thinking they were about to walk out richer. Instead, they walked into a table covered in printed emails, bank transfers, forged signatures, and a flash drive full of every piece of evidence Marissa and I had collected. I wish I could bottle the look on Ryan's face when my lawyer slid a folder across the table and said, "You're both looking at criminal charges." Claire went pale. "You don't understand," she started, but I cut her off. "I understand perfectly. I understand you were ready to destroy me for him. I understand you lied, you cheated, and you forged my name to drain everything I built. What I don't understand is how you thought I'd never find out." Ryan tried to speak, but my lawyer interrupted with a calm, almost bored tone. "Mr. Matthews, you might want to save that for your attorney. And given the amount of evidence we have, I strongly suggest you find one soon." The meeting ended with them leaving in silence, their little empire of lies collapsing in real time. Marissa called me later to say that she'd heard from a mutual friend that Ryan had skipped town within a week, probably running from both me and his debts. Claire tried calling me for days afterward. Voicemails, texts, emails, swinging wildly between apologies and threats. I never responded. The divorce was quick, clean, and entirely in my favor. She left with nothing but the clothes she brought into the marriage. 6 months later, I was standing on the porch of my father's cabin, the sun setting over the trees, a beer in my hand. It wasn't just about winning. It was about knowing I'd taken back control, that I hadn't let them turn me into their victim. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe.